Einen wunderschönen guten Morgen an alle unsere Zuseher. Bună dimineața din Bukarest. Es freut mich, dass Sie hier sind bei unserem Webinar. As our webinar participants today and as our speakers partially are in English, I avail myself of the opportunity to start in English and will keep this webinar in English language. So very warm welcome to our webinar Renewable Energy in Romania. Why do we talk about that topic? I guess now with the high energy prices and all the technology developments that we have, renewable energy finally pays off without too much of subsidies and too much of support that is being given by the governments. Renewable energy is a very important factor in the energy consumption and production in Romania, and we will hear about this today. But with that, I would like to introduce our speakers to you and start off with Johannes Becker, who is with us from TPA Romania. He's a partner at TPA Romania. He's an expert on European Union funds. We have with us Cristina Gheorghiță. Cristina Gheorghiță is legal partner at TPA Romania. Good morning to Vienna. She will give us an introduction to the current trends in the renewable energy legislation in Romania, together with Natalia Ștefăniță, legal manager at TPA Romania as well. So we have TPA Romania from Vienna, Johannes Becker, and the ladies here in Bukarest with us. We also have with us today Dan Prodan. Dan Prodan is the General Director, General Manager of Wien Energie, Vienna Energy, Forța Naturală, and he's going to give us a testimonial. Vienna Energy has some small hydropower plants here in Romania and has some good experience in the market, and Dan Prodan will share all those experiences with us. I will introduce the technicalities to you now, and then further on, two of my colleagues, Mihai Mark, the expert in the field in our office, and Stefan Stürzer, my deputy, will introduce also some subsidies that we can, offers that we can give to you as Austrian companies. So let me start with this, with the technical basics. If you have questions, please feel free to ask the questions anytime. The questions come up to us. I will see the questions all the time. But basically, at the end of the webinar, at the end of all the presentations, we will have a Q&A session. We will pick up your questions and our speakers will answer them to you. If we don't have enough time today and we run out of time, we have the questions, we will turn them on to the speakers and the speakers will come back to you right away. If you want to see a sequence again, if you missed an interesting topic, no problem at all. We have a recording of it. On our YouTube channel of Außenwirtschaft Austria, Advantage Austria, we will have a recording of this webinar and you can see any part of it later on. Yeah. If you want to see the presentation later on, we're going to send the presentation and the link to our YouTube Advantage Austria channel to the video that we're recording later on to you by email. So within a few days, let's say Monday, Tuesday next week, you will get the presentation and the link to the recording of this webinar. You can actually switch between the windows that you see right now, like me in the window and the presentation in the window, and you can enlarge either of the windows. On the right top side of the small window, you have 3 dots. You click on it and you can enlarge this window. So if you don't see the presentation as the large window right now, please feel free to change that. If you have any technical problems, if you need any technical support, you have a chat window and our organizers are going to be there and they're going to assist you with any technicality you have. You don't hear a tone or anything like this, please feel free to get back to our team in Vienna and they will assist you with any technical issues that you might have. Yeah, with this, let me go on to the next slide. And I would just like to give a short introduction to you of the important economic sectors of the Austrian companies here in Romania. We are in 8 sectors in Romania, market leaders, and in another 3 sectors, we're within the top 3 investors, foreign investors here in Romania. We talk about resources like oil and gas, forestry, wood, minerals, agriculture, landholding, sugar, industry, construction materials, real estate development, packaging, banking, insurances, and logistics. So we're all strong in those sectors, but we do have a lot of investments in wind energy, in photovoltaic energy, and also in small hydropower plants. We will get more about that. I wanted to give you one idea about the Austrian-Romanian bilateral trade, because everybody talks about a crisis. Do we have a crisis? So we give you the long-term view on it, and you will see that in the 2008-9 crisis, we had a steep drop and a long time for the recovery in our bilateral trade. This time in 2020, we only had an 8% drop in 2020, and we have a 30% increase in 2021 with the exports, imports from Romania, 45%. So said enough, the business is going well, the economy is really going well, and with this, I would like to hand over to my colleague Mihai Mark, and Mihai will introduce you now into the energy sector in Romania and renewable energy sector in Romania. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Gerd, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Mihai Mark. I'm in charge, among others, here at the Advantage Austria office in Bukarest with the energy sectors. All the queries and requests that we receive from you will somehow be processed, and somehow I will support on that topic. And I thought maybe just to get a little overview of the market. First of all, where do we stand in Romania regarding the production of energy, how the mix looks like, because I think it's very relevant for the whole topic and discussion afterwards. And the second of all, where does Romania want to go to? So the official plan of the government of Romania submitted also freshly to the European Commission and approved as well. So here we go. Before we get into the more detailed questions regarding legal and financing issues, this is where Romania stands. So one, I think, very important info is here that you see on the image, on the graphics that you have during the presentation, is that the production mix of energy in Romania looks actually quite diverse, and it's somehow hearing from the other countries actually a quite good mix. Now this is one major issue. One is the production, the other one is the consumption. But anyhow, it's still relevant that the biggest part is somehow hydropower, so water. Maybe Mr. Prodan can correct me if I'm wrong later, or I'm glad to receive other figures. The numbers I have are actually from the ANRE, so the main regulating body of the government in the sector of energy. So once again, around 34% produced from hydro, so water energy, 21% from coal, 15% each, so hydrocarbons, oil and gas, basically, and I think the ones wind, I think, yes, sorry for mixing them up, and then together solar and nuclear power, roughly 7%. So basically, one major takeaway from this graphic that I insisted on putting in the presentation is, or in my view, is to actually know that we have a quite diversified mix of production in Romania, first of all, and second of all, it's really more than half of the energy produced in Romania comes actually already from renewable resources. So just you have a rough sum up over there around, as I said, 35% hydro, 16% wind, photovoltaic around 7%, and biomass is not very relevant right now, but it also says it has great potential below 1%. Now this is where we stand. The next two slides, and I hope I'll make it short in the maximum three or four more minutes. This is a brief sum up from where the Romanian government heads to. So the plans, the official plans for the 2030. This is all from Romania's National Energy and Climate Plan submitted to the European Commission and also, I think, approved really briefly a month ago in October. So this is from the final version. So major takeaways from here are, of course, the main objective is to ensure an energy supply from as much as Romania can from internal sources, which is deeply connected, of course, to the below sub-point or the bullet point regarding the security of the supply, of course. One major target is, of course, the decarbonization, which means, of course, decrease of the CO2 emissions by 30% is quite ambitious for Romania, and somehow, on the other hand, I think it's quite feasible since the mix, as I said, is quite good in general, and also a big part of the polluters of the heavy industry don't really exist anymore or work on low capacity. So I think it sounds very ambitious, but I think it's feasible for Romania. We'll see how it goes until 2030. The second of all is the deployment of alternative fuels and advanced biofuels, and what Romania means by that in the strategy or in the plan is, of course, among them is the LPG, so liquefied petroleum gas, the use of it, and also the CNG, compressed natural gas. So it's all in the plan to somehow increase the capabilities of using that and invest in it, of course. The increase of electrification in the transportation sector, it's somehow we see first steps over here in major cities such as Bukarest or maybe Brasov and even Cluj. We have first these initiatives in the budget of them, and the first cars already in the transportation, so having of course electricity driven or battery driven. Also new measures for promoting active consumers, or in brackets as I put prosumers. I think this was one of the issues in Romania. Just to give you one or two examples, there were two initiatives published by the government. One of that was the Casa Verde, also the greenhouse. As I said on my last check, and this was in August, or roughly 3 months ago, there were 12,000 approved contracts for the subsidies in Casa Verde. However, roughly 2,000 were already reimbursed, so just a minor part of it, because once it was published in 2019, already the government had some suspicions of fraud or initial queries that were submitted that weren't quite fair. And the second one was Electric Up, mainly thought for the Horeca, so hotels, restaurants, catering businesses, for all of them to put photovoltaic panels on their roofs and become so active consumers, prosumers in the grid. However, this also went a bit wrong, since many of the queries and the reimbursements roughly started out and still in an analysis phase. So there are initiatives and there is a big interest for it. However, it doesn't work very smoothly in this sector. And the other one is the electricity, the increase of the supply security by 35% is another major topic for Romania of the installed capacity. As I said, this is deeply connected to the first bullet point of the energy supply, because security is quite broad to be understood. It has a lot to do with the dephasing from the coal. It has a lot to do with the closing of some of the plants that are in the plan of Romania, and also the increase in development of new production capacities in Romania. However, it remains quite vague in the whole strategy to what extent this is even possible for 2030. The second slide and other takeaways from the National Energy and Climate Plan of Romania is, of course, to try to increase the level of the energy from renewable sources in the consumption. So one was the production, which I said is quite it's on a good start in Romania. It's quite stable. On the other hand, the consumption, we already are around 24% in the energy mix. That reaches the final consumer in Romania, when the country intends to level that up and increase that up to 30.7%. So I think it's not really ambitious. I would say it's a feasible target, and even the European Commission said Romania could have been a bit more ambitious over here. And there you see the planned new investments already included in that strategy. In the plan, you see the onshore wind farms plus 2.3 gigawatts, the power plants in solar 3.7 gigawatts, and hydropower 1 gigawatt altogether. So quite a big plan for investments in the years to come up to 2030. Now, the next point is reactors at Cernavoda. Yes, it's still one, so nuclear power is still one major issue in Romania. It's still included in the energy plan, and the whole intention is to build up that capacity with further 1.4 gigawatts. However, the news that we got these days regarding nuclear power is that together with the White House, or United States, there is a plan to install, what are they called? SMRs, so small modular reactors in Romania. We'll see to what extent this will be possible and how it breaks the first. It is already controversial, since the whole method is apparently not approved in the European Union. However, it's still in the plan to increase that capacity. And the other one, deeply connected to the security, of course, to reach some interconnection, roughly of 15%. This is in order, of course, to facilitate cross-border trade between the neighboring countries and Romania. So we're talking about Republic of Moldova, Ukraine, Serbia, Hungary, first of all, which is another major issue for Romania to reach 15%, which is not a great number, but however, good intents. And the last point before I give over to my colleague Stefan for further info and of our services that we can provide to you is, of course, one thing, however, that remains very vague in the plan of Romania and ECP is the development of storage capacities for energy in Romania and digitalization of the energy system. However, as I said, no further comments here since the whole statement remains very vague and there are no clear already concrete measures that I could follow up with. However, if you ever have queries, research questions, looking for specific context or whatever, reports from the industry, please feel free to write us. This was the major info that I wanted to give away to you. These are major takeaways from Romania's strategy and so energy plan. I hope we'll get to it by 2030. Thanks a lot for your attention and we'll be in touch.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mihai. Before we start in a few moments with our first keynote speech, I just wanted to inform you about a recent change we had in one of our in the Go International initiative, which is basically an initiative funding, a direct funding for Austrian companies within their fields of internalization and export activities. The measure we present here, the Bildungscheck, has had a recent change. It was until now only open to small and medium-sized companies. Now it's available for all companies. It is aimed to increase the training level and qualification of foreign staff. So it's interesting not only for Austrian companies, but also for the Romanian branch offices. If you're in a Romanian branch and want to increase your training level, please communicate your training requirements to your headquarters and they will file all the necessary applications in Austria. Of course, please feel free always to get back to us. We will provide you with more information with the right contact person. And of course, you will get more information on the link shown here. As we said, all the links and all the contact details will be presented to you after the webinar. And very shortly also, we invite you cordially to have a look and maybe to subscribe our Global Situation Report. This is a monthly publication series exclusively by our headquarters, the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber, which highlights every month some of the most promising export destinations, export markets, and recent industry trends. You receive up-to-date information and exclusive assessments from our colleagues from all over the world. With this, I have the pleasure now to hand over to our first keynote, Current Trends in the Renewable Energy Legislation in Romania, presented to you by Natalia Ștefăniță and by Cristina Gheorghiță, members of the legal team, lawyers and members of the legal team of TPA Romania. Natalia is already here, so I have the pleasure to hand over to you. Thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your valuable insights with our audience.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Today I'll talk about the trends in the renewable energy sources with the accent on the current legislation in Romania. In the past 13 years since the first investors in renewable energy sources arrived in our country, Romania's law have undergone certain amendments aligned with the European relevant provisions, but also adapted to the local market conditions. The framework for renewable energy sources in Romania is Law 220 since 2008. It is the law called Renewable Law shortly, but fully it is the law for establishing a system for the promotion of electricity generation for renewable sources. This law introduced a support scheme to promote electricity from certain renewable sources, giving renewable energy producers an additional gain supplementary to the energy sold on the market. Unfortunately, in 2016, the support scheme came to an end, meaning new developments no longer could benefit from green certificates. However, developers who built before December 2016 can continue trading them until December 2031. Renewable energy producers such as wind, solar, biomass, and micro hydro power plants through this mechanism were certified by the National Energy Regulatory Authority. Some would say this law is the ground zero for renewable energy sources. However, this law has been most significantly changed in 2017, bringing changes to the subsidies regime of green certificates for the scope of final consumer protection. Worth mentioning relevant legal provisions that are currently with a big impact for the investors are also Law 155 since July 2020. This law amended the energy and gas law. By these new legal provisions, investors now have access to a new trading possibility, and this is to conclude power purchase agreements without having a producer's license. Power purchase agreements were banned for more than 8 years, but my colleague Christina will detail this topic later on. And this is of very big interest for the investors nowadays. Going forward, Romania aligned its balancing market with the EU recommendations regarding a new method for settlement of single price imbalances. And this new method applies to a single settlement price and a 15-minute settlement interval. This aspect is regulated by Order 231 since December 2020. Also, I'd like to mention that Romania has a relevant history of hydrogen research and production. Since January 2020, our country has the legal framework for licensing hydrogen installations. And in this regards, the relevant legal provisions are the law 34 since 2017, and the order of the National Energy Regulatory Authority 201 since October 2020. I'd also like to add, and it is not on the slide, but I think it is really relevant. It is the National Plan for Energy and Climate Change for period 2021 and 2030. By which by 2030, Romania commits to a total of 30.7% of renewable energy electricity in its final energy consumption mix. As you could see, year 2020 was a productive year for changes in the renewable energy sources. Now I'd like to go through the recent developments in the renewable energy sources, and I would like to start with the applicable laws that is in the very benefit of the investors, not only in the energy field, but for all the investors that are coming to our countries. And this is the faster transfer of shares in limited liability companies. Most renewable energy sources projects are developed and operated by limited liability companies in Romania. And until recently, transfer of shares to third parties was subject to creditors' 30 days opposition period, which in practice stretched to some 60 days, meaning complications and delays to M&A transactions. However, following recent changes to the company's law, shares can be transferred to third parties within any time frame set by the parties. So no opposition term is currently mandatory for the parties in any transactions. Also, if the articles of association so allow the transfer of shares to third parties in limited liability companies will no longer require the approval of the shareholders representing at least 3/4 of the company's share capital. A very important draft law is the Fdi screening, and this is the foreign direct investments. The screening of foreign direct investments has been a hot topic for some time now. The Romanian Competition Council has proposed this draft of emergency government ordinance implementing the Fdi regulation, and this is the regulation 452 since 2019. And until now, it is a draft law, is still undergoing the legislative process, but I'd like to stress out some relevant proposals that have a big impact for investors and future transactions. All transactions under the newly proposed Fdi regime, all transactions and new investments that meet an investment value in excess of 2 million euros must be notified to the Fdi Screening Commission, that is part of the Romanian Competition Council. This notification has to be done if that transaction is in a strategic area and energy was introduced in this area of strategic importance. And the following entities will have to submit an Fdi filing, and this is very important: non-EU citizens and companies, including trustees, EU-based companies controlled by non-EU citizens and/or non-EU legal entities that intend to make an investment. Based on the current versions of the Fdi draft law, the Fdi Screening Commission has 60 days to review the filing, and the decision of the Commission will be issued in 45 days. The failure to comply with the standstill restriction may be sanctioned with fines ranging from 1% to 5% of the total turnover achieved by the investor in the financial year before that transaction. The current law is not entirely clear on the applicable transition rules, and it seems that the filing obligation might extend to transactions signed prior to the entry into the force of the Fdi draft law, but not yet closed. However, this is unlikely to be adopted since it would be against the legal principles. And with regards to these aspects and other sensitive provisions, the local communities of investors, chambers of commerce from Romania have sent a request to the President of Competition Council demanding to revise the various articles that would have a negative impact on the investors. As I said, it's important to know that this draft law is still under the legislative checks and is not yet in place. And also I'd like to talk shortly about the offshore wind, because I know it's a very interesting topic for the investors nowadays. In June 2020, the Romanian Senate proposed for debate a draft law regarding the necessary measures for performing operations for offshore wind exploitation. Currently, the draft law is still in the parliamentary procedure, awaiting endorsements from various parliamentary committees. But it's important to say that the offshore wind this draft law proposes that the rights for initiating and carrying out offshore projects to be obtained from the Romanian state through the Ministry of Economy, either through concessions, tender procedure, or by direct licensing, and this is of a big impact. However, offshore wind farms established in accordance with competitive tendering procedures are entitled to subsidies in certain circumstances. But as I said, it's still a draft law, and it's not yet in force. Now I'd like to give the virtual floor to my colleague Christina, who will talk shortly about the green certificates and the trading of electricity. Christina, you have the floor now.
Hello, nice meeting you. First of all, I would like to specify that in view of this increased interest in renewed increased interest in the energy sector, TPA Romania has also issued an energy report dated 2021, which describes in more details legal aspects as well as tax and financial aspects and funding aspects, part of which you hear today from us, from the lawyers, and then from Johannes about the funding. So this report is available on our website, or upon request we can provide you with it. So I'm talking about briefly about two subjects which are of large interest for investors in energy sector, which is the sale of energy and then the green certificates trading. First of all, about the sale of energy. We have to say that we know it is a regulated market that has to take place on the OPCOM market, but we have some recent legal amendments about which Natalia also mentioned briefly. And now we have the producers and suppliers exempt from trading on OPCOM platform under certain circumstances. And we have two circumstances. So we have the producers can enter into power purchase agreements, even if they do not yet have a license, which must be obtained, however, in 60 days prior to the first delivery. And then the second circumstance into which they are exempt to trading on the OPCOM is that for the market participants who mix these various sources of electricity, and they can enter into this bilateral, the so-called bilateral aggregation agreement with the owners of the sources or their suppliers after June 2020, subject to compliance with competition rules. So we do have some declarations of the regulator in the market, UNREM, that says that in their, as far as they are concerned, everyone has the right to conclude power purchase agreements on the conditions that these agreements are accepted by the banks or the financing institutions. However, there are some issues that prevent currently parties to enter into these agreements. We still need that the instruments may be in place, but we still need more action from the government and the regulators in this respect. And the Coalition for Development of Romania, the Coalition, has also stressed that this legislation should be, this possibility should be allowed to companies, to all the companies, not only for producers after June 2020. So this is a development in the sale of energy outside of the OPCOM market based on these agreements that would deblock the market and is highly and for a long time awaited by the investors. We can talk now about the green certificates. So the green certificates, these schemes that were available and my colleagues talked about before, now the companies can trade them both on OPCOM market as well as on bilateral market. However, when you trade these green certificates, you have a price that fluctuates under the conditions of the government. So government decision fix these prices, a minimum price and the maximum price. But in an effort again to boost the interest in this sector and to make it more interesting from a financing point of view, the government has opened a public consultation since 2019 about a scheme, so-called contracts for differences. This public consultation took place, however, it's not adopted yet. The scheme is inspired by the British system of CFDs. These CFDs would be a private law contract where the parties agree on a so-called strike price. So producers sell electricity on the competitive market, with the difference arising between the market price and the so-called strike price from the contract being subject to settlements. We do expect this legal framework to be finalized as well in order to boost the sector more. So as we see in conclusion from the legal developments, we do see also in our company that there are positive market signals for the second wave of renewables. As we also see increased interest from investors in the project commenced already 2017-2019, they are increasingly reactivated. However, as we spoke about the two instruments before, power purchase agreements and green certificates, we still see the need for an updated and harmonized legislation for the energy sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christina. Let me continue now talking about the possibilities to finance these projects, because of course money is always an important issue, and as you will see in the next minutes, there are numerous possibilities for investors to receive grants and funds from the European Union and from other sources for their renewable energy projects. Why is this the case? Because I'm sure you have heard in the last months and years that there are two major topics for the European Union for the next years. First of all, of course, green transition, and secondly, also digital transition and productivity. So today we're talking about the green transition. This is a short overview of what I'm going to talk about today. These are actually not even all the programs that are relevant for funding of renewables for the next years, but these are the most important ones. And all of them, of course, fit also into the idea of the Green Deal. Let's start with the first one. That is one that actually resulted from the COVID crisis. It's called the Recovery and Resilience Facility. It is available basically in all European countries. The idea of it is to help economies, to help countries, and to help companies to become stronger after the COVID crisis. And the important point is we're not necessarily talking as the primary focus of financing here, but the basic focus, the primary focus of it is reforms and public investment projects. This means that it's not only such that countries or companies receive money, but they actually have to implement some political targets with these funds. The amount of money is huge, as you can see. So all over the European Union, it's more than 670 billion euro that are available. Half of it approximately grants, half of it loans. And the very important point for us today is 37% of this amount has to be used for climate investments and reforms, another 20 for digital, and there are many other topics, of course, that have to be covered by these funds. Now, if you look just at Romania, you will see that even for Romania, the amount that we can receive is huge. Romania will receive 29.2 billion euro. The important point is that half of this money is a grant, half of this money is a loan. Romania and Italy are actually the only two countries who are also using the loan. The other countries said it's easier and cheaper for us to finance our projects on the market, but Romania and Italy decided to take also the loan, which means that we really have a huge amount of money available. And there are mostly three topics that we have to look at. First of all, Romania wants to use a part of this money to finance 950 megawatts of photovoltaic and wind energy. Secondly, they want to install 100 megawatts of electrolysis for green hydrogen. And the third one is 240 megawatts of battery storage capacity by the end of 2025. Now, today, because this is also the only program that is starting to be a little bit more concrete, because the others are still in very early stages of discussion, let's talk only about the first one, the 950 megawatts for photovoltaic and wind energy. Discussions are really just at the start, but if you see here, timeline is very short. The projects actually should be prepared by the first quarter of 2022. So the plan is to submit projects by the first quarter 2022. Only for wind energy and photovoltaics. That's an important point because other projects or programs might allow also other forms of energy. What can be financed? We always have to look only at the difference of the investment costs of the wind energy or photovoltaic plant in comparison with a conventional plant. Usually this will be one based on gas. And only the difference of these two investment costs, that's actually the basis for our funds. And in this case, 100% of this difference can be financed. As it looks now, we will have two different kind of programs, one for smaller projects that can receive up to 15 million euro, and one for very large projects that could receive up to 120 million euro. As you see here, if you have been taking care of the last slide, it said that by 2024 the project should be finished. Here, and this is actually the Romanian draft guideline, it says July 2026. So we have to see, as I said before, this is still under discussion. We will see which the final deadline will be. Just this afternoon, we're going to have a discussion with some people from the ministry regarding the details of this guideline. But as it seems, the budget we're going to have will be 460 million euro. Next big program is the multi-annual financial framework 2021-2027. That's the usual cohesion and structural funds programs that we see every 7 years. Idea to increase the competitiveness of the EU and to strengthen weak sectors and to promote stronger sectors. Huge budget again, all over the European Union, more than 1,000 billion euro. And important here, 30% of these funds have to be targeted for climate-related projects. Each country can choose the programs as they like. And if you look into Romania, we have 46.6 billion euro at our disposal for this period. Public and private projects, I would say approximately 15% of this money will be used for private projects. But we are here at very early stages of discussion. So we have some papers from a year ago that have not been updated. So we really cannot say in detail what will be eligible and what the conditions will be. But as far as we see it, we have three different possibilities. One, investments in renewables. Secondly, energy-related research and development. And thirdly, energy efficiency measures. The next program are the Just Transition Funds. Just Transition Funds is something that is thought to mitigate the negative effects of the climate change and of the transition of the economy towards climate neutrality, because it does, of course, also several negative effects, mostly social effects. And the other idea is to get out of coal. Yeah? Romania can receive about 2 billion euro for these programs. There are only 6 areas of Romania where projects can be financed. And the projects do not necessarily have only to be climate related, but they should have a climate related aspect. Yeah? So basically also an investment of a company that produces something that is somehow climate related and offers a lot of new jobs will have good chances to be approved. Again, this is still under discussion. It should have been finalized already by autumn this year. It did not happen yet because we don't have a government, but I assume in the next months we will see good progress on this. So these were the programs where Romania could actually use the funds for itself. Now I'm shifting to programs where the European Union is actually the one who's deciding who is receiving the funds, which means also that in this case, like the innovation funds, projects from Romania are in competition with projects from all the other EU countries, which makes it, of course, also from our experience, a lot more difficult to receive these funds. And the level of, let's say, of preparation and of innovation of these projects has to be a lot higher than when we talk about the programs I just explained in the last minutes. So the first one is the Innovation Fund. Innovation Fund has as a basic idea that by these projects, emissions should be reduced, competition should be increased, and it is thought only for companies that are investing in innovative, clean energy solutions. And the key word, as the name of the fund already says, is innovation here. So it has to be something that is really, let's say, still maybe even in a research area, or let's say in a stage that is not fully ready for being marketed. The budget for the coming years is up to 30 billion euro. That's a little bit flexible because it's in part financed by the CO2 certificates. 100% of this budget has to be used for climate-related projects. What is eligible as the basic rule? Financing of renewable energy sources, supporting energy efficiency and storage, and here, very interesting, also reducing emissions in industry, which means that also large energy efficiency projects of industrial companies might be eligible under this program. A very similar program is the Modernization Fund. Very similar because, let's say, the overall rules for the Modernization Funds are very much, like the overall rules for the Innovation Fund. But as you see, the word modernization already has a different perspective. First of all, these funds are available only for 10 countries, the 10 lower income EU member states. You see them on this slide. So Romania, of course, is one of them. What can be financed? Very similar like the Innovation Fund, again, renewable energy sources, supporting energy efficiency and storage. But here, as the name already says, the focus is on modernizing. So this is not a program for greenfield projects. This is a program for projects that are already existing and are already running and need improvement. Like, for instance, also in Romania, we have this huge issue with the energy networks and district heating. These would be eligible projects. But also if you, let's say, have a wind energy plant that is, let's say, 12 or 15 years old, and within a few years you see that you will need to change some of the turbines, this might be a possibility to receive some funds. Overall, we have 14 billion euro. Again, approximately, because also here we have the link to the CO2 certificates. And this money, again, is 100% for climate-related projects. The biggest program of all of these programs is actually the one that I'm talking now about. That's called IPCA, or in the full name, Important Projects of Common European Interest. And basically, that says it all already. So this is a program that is thought for huge multinational projects, only for 4 sectors that I'm going to explain to you in a minute. The idea is that companies and institutions, in this case, from different countries, work together to solve an issue that the European Union is confronted with. This also means that some of the state aid rules that we have to apply and obey in the other programs do not apply here. Yeah, for the simple reason, because we're not talking about a competition between different countries, but this is for projects where the European Union has the impression that they are simply behind on the world market and they have to accelerate and to improve the situation. Which are the 4 sectors? For us, important today here is mostly the green hydrogen part. The others are batteries, microelectronics, and the European clouds. But green hydrogen, as you will be aware of, needs a lot of renewable energy. I just had read some articles a few weeks ago that said that just to fulfill the targets for green hydrogen of the European Union by 2030, we have to increase our overall energy production by 20% by 2030. Just for green hydrogen, not talking about all the other necessities. So this means that huge international green hydrogen projects can be financed, including the renewable energy that is needed behind the hydrogen production just to power the electrolyzers. As I said at the beginning, these are not all the programs. We have, of course, some more, but they are, let's say, less specific maybe for renewable energy. First of all, Horizon Europe, that's basically the continuation of the Horizon 2020 program. There we will see specific calls, also very much research related for new technologies for renewable energies. Sometimes it is possible to finance a pilot project by these funds, but this is very difficult to predict because basically every year there are new calls for new topics that are being launched. So we simply have to see from one year to the other what the topic of the launch will be. The second one is the LIFE programs, also LIFE programs, very much focused on research and development, maybe a little bit better suited for pilot projects in this case. Also NGOs, for instance, would be eligible for this kind of investments. But again, projects that are not only made by a company, but they should be made by a company together with some research institutes. InvestEU is the huge program that was actually already invented in the last financing period, the so-called Juncker plan, if you heard of it. This is basically a plan or a program where you not receive grants, but it's more about financial instruments or guarantees that can help an investor to receive better and cheaper loans from a bank. And then we have 2 programs that are not related to the European funds, Norwegian programs. So Romania is among the 15 EU countries that can receive grants from Norway, and they usually have 5 or 7 years programs, and they always have a very strong focus on renewable energy and also on research and development and innovation related to energy. So also in the past we have seen here programs for geothermal investments, programs for photovoltaic, for wind energy, etc. And of course, also Romania has a relatively small but still active Romanian Environmental Fund. In the beginning, you heard of programs like Electric Up. These are being financed by the Romanian Environmental Fund. So this was a very, very short crash course on EU funds for the next years. I think it would be interesting also for you to hear a little bit more about practice, and this you will hear from our next speaker, Dan Prodan from Wien Energie. So Dan, you have the floor now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johannes. Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate to this webinar. My name is Dan Prodan, and I represent Wien Energie Forța Naturală in Romania. And today, shortly, I will speak about our Romanian activities, some facts about the Romanian energy, and also how we see the green development of the energy on the roadmap 2021-2030. We are Wien Energie Forța Naturală, 100% owned by Wien Energie, Austria's largest energy producer and provider, subsidiary of the municipality of municipal utility company Wiener Stadtwerke. In Romania, we own a portfolio of 33 small hydropower plants, and we are acting in the energy producer field. A few years ago, more precisely in 2008, we've entered into the Romanian market through several acquisitions of 31 small hydropower plants from the largest hydropower producer, Hidroelectrica. So we acquired the brownfields. We had a large and complex refurbishment program during 5 years, where we implemented all the technical instruments in order to, and modernization in order to achieve capacity goals and also operation. A few years later, we developed also 2 new greenfields in Romania from zero with an installed capacity 1.8 megawatts. Per total, we summarize 50 million euro in investments in Romania, including the refurbishment program that I already mentioned. In Romania, we are a top 3 player in small hydro energy producer in Romania after Hidroelectrica and another local player. We can mention that we supply energy for green energy for 20,000 houses for a year, and yeah, we are looking confident in future investment in Romania. We, as already mentioned, we transfer besides the assets from the Hidroelectric, also the employees. So during the period, we faced a lot of challenges. I would say technical challenges and also organizational challenges. Having transferred the 60 employees from Hidroelectrica, we transferred also the culture organization, being a state company, having some crashes in between the new company organization culture that we wanted to implement and their vision and let's say the habits of work. Nevertheless, as we love IT, we are controlling today the power plants remotely, 100% from any place, from the internet. In the same time, we develop a structure of so-called National Dispatch Center, Energy Dispatch Center, that is operating our power plants 24/7 from all over Romania. As an energy portfolio structure, our assets are covering 70% assets, small hydropower plants on lakes, on the reservoir, having the possibility to profile the energy and to reduce the unbalancing, of course, giving us this flexibility, and 30% of our installed capacity, it is on the river bed. As already my previous colleagues mentioned, during the 14 years of activities in Romania, we faced major challenges, and here I will mention the renewable law, especially the green certificate support scheme that was drastically changed during the time. I will speak also about the fiscality that was burning in some period of time, but at the end, we are committed to remain in Romania, and also we are evaluating future investments as the new opportunities are rising. And few of the facts that I'm presenting here were already discussed, but I will insist a little bit from the from the energy actor field. And we see a real need of implementation of various instruments like contract for difference as a main support mechanism for investments, establishing the power purchase agreements that somehow they exist in the law, but it's difficult to be applicable, and also the is not binding in relation with the banks. I will not insist too much on the simplification of licensing and authorization, but I can say that in the last period of years, in the recent years, we see a different approach of the authorities in relation with the potential investments, especially renewable investments in Romania, and also the acceptance level of the society of the in regards to the renewable energy was changed, being more on favor of the renewable energy. Still, Romania faces some major issues related to the energy mix, energy structure, and due to the, let's say, the pressure that we have now with the climate change and some directives promoted by the European Union with the Green Deal, Romania face a pressure to replace the coal in the short time. In the same time, I can mention that unfortunately Romania was becoming from a net exporter. In the last 2 years, it's a net importer. So we have a negative deficit of the energy. This is mainly due to the actual capacities that we have in place. The coal, for example, the installed capacity, it was almost 6,000 megawatt, but currently more than 1,700 megawatt are in operation. So we have this pressure of the CO2, we have the pressure of the decarbonization of the energy sector, and Romania must do something. I will mention here that in the previous investment cycle, 2008-2016, in Romania were invested 8 billion euro only in renewable sector, representing 5,300 megawatt. Unfortunately, after this previous investment cycle was closed, from 2016 till today, zero energy capacity were installed in Romania. So I see a need, we have a real need of replacing the actual capacities, and also correlated with the new targets imposed by European Union that we must attend at the end. So Romania started in 2005 from a target of 10% renewable energy sources from the total energy production, reaching at the end of 2020 24%. Still, the first draft that Romania transmitted to the European Commission last year was a proposal of 30.7% as renewable energy capacities in the total energy production. This target was considered to be unambitious by the European Commission, so now there are discussions to be increased to 35%. Also, in the considering the constraint given by the Fit for 55. As a short roadmap, I will start with the actual needs. So Romania definitely has a pressure to replace coal. In the same time, we can mention that the nuclear power plant that we have in Cernavoda with an installed power of 1,400 megawatt also will have the cycle of operation will be at end of life in less than 5-10 years. So we have also this need to replace and to take some measure, and also as we are importing in average 1,000 megawatt, and in some cases Romania even tested the cross-border technical capacity to 2,000 megawatts as a net import. We see a fast development. We see necessary fast development and implementation of the several financial instruments that already been mentioned here in the webinar. But still, I will focus here and what we see from the energy players as a missing link in the new investment. We see the establishing the power purchase agreement in the law, in the master law, in order to be accepted by the banks. So this is a mandatory point that needs to be implemented in the law. Also, we see the contract for difference that also was mentioned as a part of a new development. But together with this, definitely we need some investments to be done in the grid connection, the transport and distribution. Otherwise, the new capacities that we intend to install in the future, we cannot put it into operation due to the lack of the capacity. I will mention here also to another technology beside the wind and photovoltaic, the biomass. Biomass represents also an important source of energy in Romania, as we have the raw material. So we have a law that is in Parliament for more than 2 years and was not adopted. Also, this must be put it on the parliamentarians' agenda, and also on the hydro. We need to solve the issue with the water cost and also with the riverbed rent. Beside this, the reducing bureaucracy and of course simplification are on the path. But I want to conclude on an optimistic note, mentioning that we see a totally different approach from the authorities. Also, comparing with the last investment cycle, we see much more professional organizations that are involved in discussion with the authorities. So we are confident that at the end we'll close successfully this new investment cycle. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan Brodan from Vienna Energy. Very interesting what you presented to us, and actually also very interesting what the developments are going to bring for us. We had some questions coming in. I just wanted to mention something. Our time is to the end, so we're going to go for a bit of Q&A right now. But I wanted to let everybody know that within the next few days, Monday or Tuesday, we're going to send out a link to our Advantage Austria, Auswirtschaft Austria YouTube channel, so you can watch any part of the video again, and you will also get the presentations that you saw today. So with this, I would like to come to our Q&A session, and I would like to ask all my speakers to come back online with me, with your camera and with your microphones. And we had some interesting questions coming in. One of the questions refers to Natalia and to Christina. In your presentation, you talked about the recent legal developments in renewable energy sources, and especially the green certificates trading. You talked about the mechanism for which allows eligible producers to have direct private law contracts with counterparts and agree on a strike price. Could you elaborate a bit on what you mean with the strike price? How does it work? What is it? Natalia, do you have your microphone switched on?
Yes, it is here, but I think Christina could detail based on the...
Yeah, this contract for differences would be a contract, private contract between the parties, yes? And so being a private contract, they can agree like the price should be an element of their contract. And then producers that will be allowed in this scheme for financial differences for CFDs will be able to sell in the market at the market price, and there will be a difference between the market price and the strike price, and this difference will be possible to be settled. So there will be a separate settlement mechanism. These private agreements are meant to go outside of this regulated price that is currently under the scrutiny of the government. I think it's probably similar to those contracts that apply to a public market of shares, for example. These are more sophisticated instruments that will be available to investors in this market when it will be implemented, of course.
Thank you very much, Christina, for that. Then we already sent in advance one other question, which might not be that easy to answer. But the question that we have on our side is, what is your point of view on the GOs in the near future, the guarantee of origin for the European energy? Will Romania join the AIB, the Association of Issuing Bodies?
We have to research this and to come back.
Yeah. All right, so we will do that. Johannes or Dan, are you aware of that? The Association of Issuing Bodies.
At least personally, I'm aware, but still, I don't see it on the next year's agenda, on the agenda of our authorities.
All right.
Yes.
So we're gonna come back, Christina and Natalia. You're gonna come back with an answer to that question.
Yes.
Then we get in another question, which is like in the recovery and resilience facility, how much do you think will be the difference capex between renewables and conventional plants? Dan, do you think you're the one who can answer that?
Well, it's difficult to mention. Last week we had some discussion with the energy ministry through the organization professional organization that we also represent, and still the guidelines are under development. Now they are trying to. The energy ministry is on the rush just to set up the criteria for this. So they are still on discussion. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, and also Johannes is participating to these meetings. In the next 2 weeks, we'll have more concrete data, and definitely we'll be able to share with everyone.
Okay, perfectly fine. And one last question, which I guess I would also turn to you, Dan. The small nuclear reactors, do you think that this is going to be a complete game changer or be kind of an obstacle to the development of the renewable energy sources, as well as, for instance, the Neptune D project, which will bring a lot of gas onshore?
Well, I will speak a little bit about gas. Frankly speaking, I don't see such a, let's say, such a sharp cut between transition from coal to the renewable. This is difficult to be done, and especially Romania is blessed. Beside the renewable resources, we are blessed with important gas reserves. So this, I see gas as an energy transition definitely. So this will be an intermediary step. Related to the nuclear, what shall I say? During the 14 years of activity in Romania, we saw a lot of initiative from the Romanian governments that I prefer to say, okay, let's see something on place, and then we'll consider then to evaluate. But as an initiative, I consider that it's a good point. Nuclear Electrica, it will have a major issue in 5 years to fully refurbish the first reactor, and in another 10 years the second reactor. So Romania will be out of operation with 1,400 megawatt, and this will be a critical issue for our energy mix.
And I guess, Dan, you're actually our favorite speaker, the favorite one answering questions that are coming in. And that question actually refers also to your company that we have. There was a lot of talk about energy transition and so on, but geothermal energy wasn't mentioned at all in our presentations. 50% of this energy is used for heating, so it's kind of surprising. And they say that countries like France, Switzerland, and Turkey are showing that it can significantly be used for heating and reduce CO2. You are planning a large geothermal project in Vienna right now for district heating. Do you have any plans which are kind of similar for Romania?
I would say that it is an interesting topic to discuss. Romania has also an important resource of thermal in some areas. So related plans in Vienna are already official. Related to the Romanian investment, we don't have such an investment on our agenda. Still, as I already mentioned, biomass is not on the public agenda of the authorities, and also geothermal as currently there is. Also, from our side, for the moment, we don't have an interest on this area in Romania.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Johannes, you are also the member of the Coalitia, which is kind of the speaking authority to the government of the entrepreneurs and the companies. You're part of the European Union Fund's task force of Coalitia. And I would actually like to pose this question to you that came up because you might be the one who is best to answer it. I also heard about it. We also had this discussion. The Romanian government says that they want to bring gas to the small villages all over the country, which might be a very, very long-lasting procedure and process until it actually reaches there. So Johannes, can I address the question to you? What do you think? Wouldn't it be better to have renewable energy sources there?
Yeah, there has been actually a very long discussion between companies that are delivering gas in Romania and supplying gas with the European Union, also regarding the Recovery and Resilience Fund, because the European Union said we do not want to finance this kind of project any longer, because they're just transitional projects. Within a few years, they will not be relevant anymore. But what did happen in the end is that they interpreted this project in such a way that they said, okay, today we are going to deliver natural gas with these power lines or gas lines, pipelines, but in a few years from now, we intend to deliver hydrogen. So basically, that was the way how they actually could receive still some financing for this kind of projects. But it's clear that in the long term, this should not be the solution. But as Dana said, as an intermediary way of producing energy, I think we will still need gas for several years.
Okay, thank you very much, Johannes. And I guess we take one last question right now, which we're going to address to Christina and Natalia from TPA Romania, the legal partner and legal manager at TPA Romania. The question goes in the direction, what are the implications of the new law 259/2021 on biomass energy producers in Romania?
If this is okay, because it's an elaborate question, we would like to come to the person who addressed this question in writing, if this is okay, because it would be a very complex discussion. Thank you.
We do have actually the names and the contact details of all.
Yes, this would be perfect.
So we will also give you to all our speakers the questions from our viewers. And with this, I actually wanted to say thank you very much to our viewers. You have been very loyal to us. The largest part is still online, and you've been with us despite that we are like 11 minutes late right now. But with this, I wanted to conclude the webinar. As we said, our recording is going to be shown on the Advantage Austria, Austria YouTube channel. You're going to get the link for that. The presentations are also going to be sent out to you next week. And yeah, so let me thank you to our speakers, Christina Georgica, legal partner at TPA Romania, Natalia Stefanica, legal partner at TPA Romania, Johannes Becker, also partner at TPA Romania for European Union funds, and Dan Prodan, General Manager of Wien Energie, Vienna Energy Forza Naturala. Thank you very much for being with us. Also, a big thank you to my colleagues Stefan Stürzer and Mihai Mark for the presentations. I guess it was a very interesting webinar that we had today, and yeah, with a lot of content. So we might actually have to review it. Thank you very much, and thanks to all our viewers in Romania and in Austria. Ossi Minonata, have a nice day and einen wunderschönen Tag nach Österreich. Auf Wiedersehen. Danke sehr.